Daith da Eubinakan. Welcome to podcast number 98. Well, I'm back here in good old Kernow, and I'd like to say sunny Cornwall, but 'tis blimmin' freezing. 'Tis been raining today. 'Tis like October, really. And at least I am back in God's good country. But even though I say that, tonight's podcast is going to be quite cosmopolitan, because I will talk a little bit about me further adventures in Spain, but then I got a booty interview with me dear mate and workmate, Mervyn Walker. Now, Mervyn, he's done some fantastic things in his life. The amount of fundraising he's done is fantastic. But I did know that he'd gone over to Lourdes a few times, and he'd been over the last few weeks. So I thought we'd speak to him about that this week, and I'm sure you'll love it. But since I spoke to you last week, me and Beth, we went on a fantastic bike ride. It was up round Tolada, I think it was called. And we found this lovely old church. I put some photos on my Facebook page, these lovely statues and everything. It was fantastic. But I've always thought the Cornish are like laid back, like directly. You do it directly. Well, we got nothing on the Spanish. They just seem so laid back. I mean, their roads are fantastic, beautiful, smooth roads. But when you get to the pavements or the verges or whatever, Christ, you've got a 4-foot ditch down this side. No crash barriers or nothing like that. I was thinking also they was quite car friendly, because you seem to be able to park in a lot of places without having to pay. And I thought they got no speed cameras or nothing. But then one day I did see this sign that said radar. And I Googled it, and it was a kind of a speed camera. Now, I looked at the speed I was meant to be going, and it was 20 kilometers an hour. Now, over here, we got to do 20 miles an hour in and out, and that's nearly impossible. And this is just even slower again. So I'm kind of waiting, worrying that I might be getting a few speeding tickets coming through the post. I hope not, but I don't know how strict they are. But that is a little bit of a worry. The postman might be dropping something in me letterbox. But we ended up the holiday. It was fantastic. And then the time come to take the rental cars back to the drop-off point. So Pete went first, and he pulled up, parked up, and Mehdi come out, and he said, right, let's have a look. And what we had to do, we had to get a receipt with to prove that we'd filled up with petrol in the last 10 miles. So then we get our deposit back for the petrol. So he had his receipt off Pete, and he walked around the car and he said, yeah, it looks right. Off you go. Proper. He was just going to come to me, and this young maid appeared, and she said, I'll look after him. So I thought, all right. She seemed a pleasant sort of maid. Crikey. She went over, she got her iPad out, and she put the camera, the torch on her iPad, and she was going round nearly on her hands and knees, looking underneath the car at the bodywork and everything, and she was taking ages. Well, then the next thing, she rubbed her finger around the wheels, and when she got to the front right one, she stopped, and she stood back, she got on the phone, then she bent down. She had to actually zoom in, because I couldn't see nothing on it, but she reckoned there was a little scratch on the wheel. And she said, that one wasn't there when you had it. Well, we never checked the wheels. They showed us where there was other damage that people had done before, but didn't even think about the blooming wheels. So she said, let's see your petrol receipt. So I showed her my petrol receipt. We'd filled up 4 miles away. And she said, you haven't filled up proper. I said, I have. I said, it clicked off. She said, have you had this problem before? I said, I've never done it before. Oh, I don't know. Well, I'll let you off that, she said, but you got to pay for that little scratch on the wheel. I thought, hang. So we went back into the office, and she said, I'll give you an invoice. And the invoice was for 181 euros. She said, I'll give you that one. You can claim back off your insurance, hopefully. So I had to pay there and then before they'd let us go. So father-in-law, he booked the cars and he got the insurance. So hopefully we'll be all right. But I must admit, that last bit of the journey wasn't quite so good. But like I said, they were a laid-back crowd. We went to this festival in the town, and I had to laugh because what Mehdi had done, he was in his 70s, he had the microphone, which is fine, but when he wasn't talking, he had the music coming from his iPhone plugged into the speakers. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because we do that on funerals. But you've got to remember to put it in airplane mode. And he'd forgot to do this. So you got this music blaring out, and then every 5 minutes his phone would start ringing, which did make us laugh quite a bit, I tell you. But yeah, there we are. We're back. I tell you what, I'm feeling rough as router. I got a blimmin' cold. I reckon it must be Spanish flu. It started yesterday, and I'm feeling rough again today. And to make things worse, I did have a call at 5:15 this morning. So I've been working pretty much ever since. I did have time for breakfast, but me mate that was on with me, I ain't going to say which one it was because I don't want to embarrass him, but me mate that was on with me, he wasn't answering his phone. And I had to actually go over and ring his doorbell to wake him up. And it did remind me of a podcast, rather, that I'd done in the past with dear old Charlie Brooks when he never had a phone. And I used to have to go up Nangert and heave some stones and chippings up at his bedroom window to wake him up. I thought, crikey, I'm going back 40 years here. But at least he had a doorbell. But we got back into Cornwall at 3 o'clock on Monday. And unknown to me, they had a sweepstake as to what time I'd get back into work. And I think I got back into work at 2 minutes to 4. I think Sue was the closest, to be honest. And then Tuesday, I was back into funeral mode. We had a massive funeral for dear Lara down Padstow on Tuesday. Massive funeral. Today was a bit different as well, because I was actually sat in the at the back of the congregation then, where I normally sit on a funeral. We were conducting a funeral at Clym Valley, and the celebrant actually read out my poem, which was quite nice to hear that. So that went down quite well. Right, well, I'm now going to go over to my interview with Merv, and it's a little bit different. I tell you what, like I say, we're cosmopolitan here. I think you'll like it, and I will speak to you again directly. So here it is. Get on, Merv. How we knacking?
Oh, fine, thanks, Dave. You okay?
Yeah, proper.
Good
proper.
job.
Thank you for meeting me today.
Oh, yes, I've been a little bit nervous doing this, Lord, but yeah.
All will be well. All will be well.
Oh, fair enough.
I thought to be interesting to talk about your volunteering that you do over when you go to Lourdes. And I thought, first of all, we'd talk about where it all started. But I will tell you a funny story, because I'm not going to say which one of me family it was, but I did say to one of them that you had gone away for a week volunteering, helping all the disabled and whatever for a week in Lourdes. And they said to me they didn't realise so many disabled people went to watch the cricket. So then I realised perhaps I wasn't pronouncing Lourdes right.
No, there's another way of pronouncing it, but don't ask me.
So, but if we start first, because I know that you had a connection with the nuns down Lanherne.
That's right. That all started, I don't know if you can remember, back in 93, I had a fire in the bakehouse, and so finished the bakehouse for 12 months, set up again. Things were a little bit quiet. Now I had this phone call from a lady on behalf of the sisters staying at Lanherne, where I supply them with bread, because they wanted the bread with no additives, and that's what I used to make.
Yeah.
So that's how I started to go down there. And then the first time I go down, and you've got to ring the bell, and there's a turntable, but enclosed. And you're to put the bread in the turntable. And anyway, the next thing that happens, you hear this little voice coming along the corridors. And praise be to Jesus, she was saying, and you talk through a little blacked out grid.
Right.
And so, because I'd taken the bread down, I think there's about a dozen those. You give them their bill because that's what they wanted. And so off she pops again, gets the money, comes back. So anyway, but when I came back to the bakehouse this particular day, I thought, I can't charge nuns. They've got nothing. And I thought, I'll give it to them. So I called the Reverend Mother up and I said, look, this is what I do. And she said, well, thank you, Merv, very generous. Anyway, so then I started to go down there every week with the bread, put it in the turn and disappear.
Yeah.
Now, Margaret, the lady, the housekeeper, she asked, would I stay behind because the sisters are now feeling a little bit awkward. They're having the bread and not able to say thank you. And anyway, but we got talking. So she would ask about my life and talk, I'd, tell them about my life and they would tell me about theirs.
Yeah.
And so this happened every week, got used to this. And after about 6 months, I would say, she said, would you like to meet us? So we went into a special room at the top. Again, there's a grid, but not blacked out. And the Reverend Mother was there, and also with the sister that I used to talk to every week. And this is all good. And different things happened. As I was saying to you other day, on a Saturday, I would go off and play rugby or not play rugby, they help them out down there. And then after the game, and after I run the bar, you come back to the bakehouse because I've left before the shop is shut. There's bits and pieces left over. I'll take them down to the sisters, So I would go down there and put them in the turn, and they would find it, and different things like this.
Yeah.
Then I heard the Reverend Mother, she got poorly. So, and I would ask every week, well, we don't know, dear, they will say. It's only Reverend Mother that uses the phone. So anyway, okay. So then I got collared by Margaret one day. She said, Mervyn, she said, would you do me a favour? She said, I've got permission to go and see the Reverend Mother in the hospital. Would you run us down? I said, yeah, of course, no problem. So we would run down, and we got into the room, and the Reverend Mother at this particular time was in a induced coma. She was quite poorly. And Margaret said, look, I'm going to do the rosary. She said, would you do it with me? I said, well, you lead, I follow. I knew a little bit about it, but not a great deal. Yeah. So this happened. So after a while, the Reverend Mother got better and she's out of her coma, and they put her into a private ward. And I knew this, she was a lot better. So we got some flowers, and Margaret did as well. And we walked into her room, and Margaret said, oh, Reverend Mother, she said, haven't you got a lot of flowers? And she disappeared. She said, I'm off, I'll go and get a vase. So that left me in a room with a senior nun, and I think, didn't know what to say. That's unusual for me, but didn't know what to say. And I said, Reverend Mother, I said, you've got a lot of flowers. She said, yes, Mervyn. She said, the community, she said, are amazing. She said, very generous. And also, while she was there, there are statues around her room. And I said, what's with the statues like, She said, well, this is Our Lady. She said, Our Lady of Medjugorje, Our Lady of Fatima, Our Lady of Lourdes. I said, well, who are they? And she said, Mother of Jesus. And I said, well, Mary. I said, but there's only one Mary. She said, no. She said, it's where Mary appeared in different parts of the world. Right. And I said, well, she's got a fair old wardrobe, like, hasn't she? And anyway, bit naughty. But anyway, she said, look, Mary, she said, there's a programme coming on over the weekend on Songs of Praise. There's a girl on there called Diane Louise Jordan. She used to be in Blue Peter. And she's doing a programme from Lourdes. So she said, if you watch that, she said, you'll get a better idea of what we're about. So anyway, I did watch this programme. And it's about HCPT, an organisation that takes 5,000 children from all over the world during the Easter time to Lourdes. Again, all sorts of disabilities and things like that. Right. So when I went back to the convent on Thursday, I said to her, could I go on that? Because I said, I'd be quite interested. I think I could do something like that. I said, of course. She said, there's a pilgrimage coming up in a month's time with adults and things like that. She said, I'll give you a name. And she gave me a name, Sue Vage from down in Truro, and she was organising the corners bit. So made a phone call to Sue. Yeah, no problem at all. A little bit last minute. And we met up on the train from Bodmin. We had to go from Bodmin to Paddington, and then from there we have a bus to Calais, and then a train from Calais down to Lourdes. And we was picking up sick at each stop. There's somebody might come on with, be helped on. They got no legs, and all different types of disabilities. And So it's a long old journey, and when we got to Calais and we was on the train, it was an overnight train down to Lourdes. It's like going on with football supporters, and you might be Manchester United, and you're the only Plymouth Argyle supporter, and you think the time you got there, you think, I've had enough of these. They're absolutely hyper. They're looking forward to going to Lourdes, and okay, so that's it. I'm here now. I'll put up with what I get. So we arrived at Lourdes, and you got we pulling up into the station, and you got you know, a lot of school children, about 14 to 16, I suppose,
Right.
and they're all singing on the platform as we arrive. There's helpers helping us take all our sick off. The luggage got to come off. Everything that we need's got to come off and get down to Lourdes. And I thought, wow, this is great, you know. So anyway. So the next morning, I was picked to work in the Bass, and the Bass is an important part of Lourdes, because Our Lady said, you know, because the spring appeared to Bernadette, that people immerse themselves in the waters of Lourdes. So you're down there, and again, you've got ordinary pilgrims, you know, people that's got abilities, those who have got a disability, a little bit more care and time is taken depending on the severity of their disability. So you know, you're helping immerse in the water. But the thing with this, you could be working with Frenchmen, a German, Italian, and you're the only English speaker that's in the Bass. But you also lead with a prayer.
Right.
So each person comes in, there's a little prayer said, and then when they're ready, we immerse them into the waters. So you lead a prayer. So if it's in English, they'll come and say, oh, Grace, you lead. So, okay, so I lead a prayer. Now, bearing in mind, I'm not a Catholic, not over religious. And, okay, I'm full of this, loving it. And then they came in one time, later on in the week, and they said, we got a English, and they made the sign, you know, because he got a collar. So it was a priest. And it turned out to be an Irish priest. So my claim to fame in Lourdes is to bless an Irish priest, and I'm not being a Catholic. But he was lovely. He you know, I met up with him later on, and yeah, he was quite happy with that. And then in the afternoons, I'll go back into the hospital to work, whatever. So yeah, so that was my introduction to Lourdes. But there is times I stood there coming out from the Bass to go to the hospital, and I stopped there and I looked at. There's, again, hundreds of people going into the grotto. Now, the grotto is like an open cave, if you will, right. Where there's a spring where all the waters come from. And people are going there, they're holding their hands up at touching the cave as they go through, they're saying their prayers. And you know some of these people got some severe disabilities, and you think, they're not going to be cured. You know that, you know, or that's how I see it. And I thought, this is cruel. This is not right. But then when you look again and you see what I think I call it the miracle, Lourdes, that people got their disabilities and they're going, and not to be cured, but they know that Our Lady's looking after them, and that's a big thing. And that's what I think. And I think, okay, you know, so that's how I look at it. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So how many times have you been over there?
Oh gosh, now with this group, with the Society of Our Lady of Lourdes, I've been 10 times.
Get away.
And I've also been with ACPT with children. So I remember taking over a little boy. I had to go to Plymouth each week because he had a life expectancy. Learn to wash him, dress him, to give him his medication, and I was the sole carer for that week.
I see.
Others you might take over, they might have learning disabilities, so I used to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm full of it, and I always wanted to going back to do more, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I went to a dedication service one night, when the first night I was there, and there's people that's been going 1 year, so you give them a clap, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, and you think, oh, that's great. Then it's into the 40s and the 50s, and you think, and they come every year. Now, this year I was presented with my 10 year, and there's a gentleman there when I first met him. He come from, oh gosh, forget that, Bath.
Yeah.
And I've met him on HCPT with this pilgrimage, and he also helped with the hospitality of Lourdes, where when we come in with our plane, there's a band of people there to help us unload our plane and anything we want, and they look after the sanctuary of Lourdes as well. So at least 3 times a year, this chap's going down there, and this is what I wanted to do. I just think the camaraderie is quite special.
Definitely. Yeah. So you go for a week
at a time. Yeah.
Okay. And I like, what hours do we work? What time do you get up in the morning?
Oh, that's all different. Now, when I first went over, I went as a broncardier, a general helper. So you're pushing wheelchairs and things like that. So it could be on shift at any time. Really, you're not off duty.
Right.
But now, because I worked in the hospitals and worked in children's services, I go as a carer. So you've got doctors on shift, you've got nurses on shift, the carers, and then you've got helpers that, and everybody mucks in and do things.
Yeah.
But it's a 24-hour care, because could have somebody that's bedridden, somebody that needs a care all the time, and that's what about. So you get, as a carer or a nurse, you're on shifts at certain times, so you've got to be there. Yeah. So you could be on shift from, say, 6 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 till 10, and then you've got your night shift. But that goes out the window, I find, quite a bit with Lourdes. They'll say, Merv, so-and-so's gone poorly, or they can't make it. Can you do another shift? And then by the end of the week, you're absolutely shattered. But saying that I have 10 minutes, I go down to the grotto at night time, because they close the sanctuary up, and usually there's nobody there. And I'm thinking, this is what it's all about. You know, you go to the it's like walking into a church, and you've got that special moment. You think,
definitely.
Yeah, it takes all that away.
It's funny you say that, because we was Spain last week, and we found this lovely old church in an old town, and you just go in there and there's this certain feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you will find that in Lourdes as well, it just, that's what I like about it. So
yeah. Is there many kind of British people that go like volunteering?
All the time. Really? Yeah. You can say, ours is a Side of Lady Lourdes, that's up in London, but you've got Manchester Pilgrimage, you've got Plymouth, you've got all sorts. Everybody's going there all the time. The hospitality area, which I call the hospital, is 6 stories high, and there's 2 blocks of this. So you could be on one level, you could have a German underneath, you could have Italians, they take over the group, and so on and so on. So we always use, like, say, one big block for our group.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah.
And food? What
food? Yeah, that's all. That's provided by the hospitality. But in the mornings, like, somebody's gluten-free, that is done special. But everything's taken over for that. Dinners, like dinner time, lunchtime and dinner, that's provided by the hospitality. Yeah. But if we go out on a picnic, we go up into the mountains or the hills, and everything's got to go. So, so they have lorries, they have coaches to take everything up to there, so everybody can have a good time, especially with the wine, and that's got to be a good part of it. So, yes. Yeah.
And I know you said this time you went over, there was a lot of military around.
Yeah, I think there's about 10,000 military, and they come from Brazil, Italy, Hungary, and even our British. Now I forget what they call, because I'm doing this, I can't remember the name. The red tunics and the Busby hats, the sandals on pants. They were going around in the land train playing the music and things like this. And but one thing I did find unnerving with this was I was leaving the sanctuary, because we, as helpers, you go into a place, because I don't stay in the hotels, I usually stay in a hostel, and you have your meals there. And I was coming out of the sanctuary area, and you look back, and they had the French Foreign Legion with AK-52 submachine guns, and you think, what's going on? Because this is quite a protected area. And I met two of the guys the next day, and they said, well, we're here because you've got so many military, they're an easy target. So that's why they was there. and just for protection if it's needed. But outside the sanctuary area is like Blackpool on steroids. You've got all the shops selling rosaries, statues. People want to bring someone home, but it's like absolute chaos. But in the sanctuary area, it's peaceful, it's quiet.
So how did Lourdes all start then?
Well, this started off with a young French girl, because Lourdes is in the foothills of the Pyrenees. Now, apparently Bernadette wasn't very well educated because she was quite a poorly child, and she had asthma and things like that, so she didn't go to school or got taught a lot. And they went off with her sisters and her friends or something to pick up some wood for the fires, because her father was living in the old prison, because they was quite a poor family. And she seen an apparition, and she would come back and she said she seen this beautiful lady, and so people were saying, this is not right. The girl's not there. But Our Lady asked Bernadette to come back to see her again, and she must come back on these certain dates, and which she did. And when because they kept saying, ask her name, could be, because people were saying there's a devil's work, it's this, that, and the other. And she said, I am the Immaculate Conception, which meant nothing to Bernadette, but others realised this is Our Lady. And then, while she was praying there, because people was following her, she had a big following, and people was saying she was kneeling, and she would almost, I wouldn't say go into a trance, but she was well focused on this apparition, as you can imagine. And then she was scurrying around in the earth, because Our Lady said, to dig and to drink the waters. And then a spring appeared, and then healing started to happen, and that's how basically, bit better than what I'm trying to explain it, but no, that's the basis of it. Yeah. And she's seen her, I think it was 17 or 18 times. And then people was coming there with all their ailments and things like that. And I think over the time there's been about 80 cures. Right. But not, I think the cure, what I see at Lourdes, is the people that's working. You work with some amazing doctors, nurses. You could be working with a judge. You could be a cleaner, and they're all there to help, and that's what I like. And people that, I remember giving cocoa to a lady with, she was severe with MS, and she couldn't even hold a cup. And I said to her, because I can, I'll talk bluntly and ask questions. And I said, it's okay while you're here, you've got this, that. And she said, but Our Lady looks after me when I'm home. And that's it. She said, but she said, look at that poor soul across the road, she's got it worse than I have, and things like that. And,
And you intend to go back again?
I said, after this year, I was so tired. I thought, no, but I will. Yeah, definitely.
That was like me and me marathon running. That was never again.
never again. I came back because I got to drive up to Birmingham now, and I picked up a lady from Ilfracombe who wanted to go. And time I got there, and then of course when we got to Lourdes and got all settled, I was on the first night duty. And then the same when you come back, you just absolutely shattered. But it's great, Yeah. Like I said, when I go down to the grotto and I'm on my own, I sort of, I know why I'm there, But I've never become a Catholic. I keep saying I'll become a Catholic, but I'm quite happy with what I'm doing, if you see what I mean.
Exactly.
So,
Oh, brilliant. So have you always driven or bus or whatever? Or?
Yeah, I've always gone with the pilgrimage. Then I stopped going for a while because I got married to Pat, and because we both worked in care, and we wanted our time, when we had our time off, that was quite precious to both of us. Yeah. But there was a time I decided I wanted to go back to Lourdes, and I thought, do I want to get involved again? So I cycled down to Lourdes, and I stayed in old churches, and I stayed in bed and breakfast and hostels and everything on the way down. And when I got down there, because I went purposely this time, because there's nobody I would have known. I went out of the pilgrims, so I went out of the time that our pilgrimage goes on, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And I wondered if it was I did have that pool. So anyway, I was going around there, and everybody's the same, whether they're, what is people that just come as ordinary pilgrims to Lourdes. And I was watching and sort of thinking, yeah, this is what I wanted to do. So the next year I cycled down again, and I met up with our group, which I was booked to go in to see. And I remember getting to the entrance to the sanctuary. I left my bike there, and one of the security said, your pilgrims, they're in the Rosary Basilica. So I goes down there, and it's like turning the clock back and get on, Merv, you're right.
Get away.
Yeah, I do find it a special place.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, most definitely.
Brilliant.
And I've had people that would come when I had the bakehouse, especially. I remember there was a mum and dad came to me, and their daughter was quite poorly. She had cancer, and she was on end of life, sort of thing. And they was asking me, would they take her down to Lourdes, cure her? And I said, I can't answer you that. I can't answer. But yeah, you just wish you could.
So, well, thank you, mate. That is absolutely brilliant.
Oh.
Appreciate that. And then I think today's has just been about Lourdes, and I think in the future I'll get you back when you're a bit older, and we'll talk about all your life, because I know you've done so many different things.
Oh, I've been lucky, really.
Yeah.
But some things have not been so. But yeah, I've been lucky.
Well, we'll get you back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a few months or years, will it?
So if you want to say goodbye to the world for now.
Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but thank you.
Proper job. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, cheers.
Okay. Well, thank you, Merv, and I hope you all enjoyed that. I think for the Cornish word of the week, I'll do water, like the water from the spring that's down there in Lourdes. And the Cornish for water is dower. Dower. And I was told off last week, actually, by Cynthia, because I was doing my podcast in the back of the car there near Benidorm, and I forgot my Cornish dialect. So I must make sure I do it this week. And I don't know if I'd done this one before, but like you say, I'm feeling quite roughy now. So I think that's the word I'm going to use for this week. If you're feeling a bit weak and not very good, is wished. I'm feeling pretty wished today, I tell you. So there we go. Right, well, I'm going to leave you now, and then I'll speak to you again next week. I hope you have a good week. Wish you well. Do get us. Curlo Basican.